very unreasonable time. So if Jill were here, we could ask her when that needs to be agreed by. So we have an extra meeting of GP in December, or it could be agreed by email.
Through you, Chair, I think agreeing by email sounds very fair, seems we've got the technical problems. What other members think?
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah. I think we could just go ahead with the meeting.
It's gone rather well, really, isn't it?
Yes, we've identified it. Okay, right, thank you. So welcome to this meeting of the Trustees of the House of Industry Estate Management Committee. Are there any apologies for absence? We've got Councillor Van, thank you. Minutes. Are the minutes of the meeting on the 13th accepted as true record?
Agree.
Thank you. Does anyone have any disclosures of local and or disclosable pecuniary interest? Councillor Moon.
Yes, item Appendix F under item 4. I'm the council representative on board.
Thank you. Any others? No? Okay, item 4, applications for financial assistance. Let me just scroll down to item 4. Okay, so the first application, Friends for Life, Bedfordshire. Are there any questions? Any comments? Councillor Atkins.
It's a question. If it is Bedfordshire, how much of it is covered with Bedford Borough? And does the application tally with that?
Thank you. As far as I'm aware, the activity that was planned was specifically around the borough although it may be wider. What we do anyway, when we notify them of the award, we would specify that any award from the House of Industry has to be used directly for the benefit of Bedford residents. So we would be clear with them if the trustees approve the award.
Any proposals? Councillor Moon? Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. The second application is Happy Days Children's Charity. Any questions? Comments? Proposal? Thank you. All agreed?
Agreed.
Thanks. The third one is Country Days Limited. Questions?
So I'm unclear as to why, if somewhere which has a PO box as an address, has a water bill of £600 and bins and waste disposal of 500, and even if that's consistent with having a post office address, it's not clear to me how that comes under project support rather than administration.
Will have been the address that's provided to us as part of the application. I presume that's how they collect the mail. I'd have to investigate further to establish whether they have any office addresses other than that. In terms of the specific project, I understand that the bin and waste disposal is specific to this particular project. Again, it would be something I have to seek further clarification as to whether it was part of the general cost of the organisation or whether it was specific to the project.
Yeah, it's just I find it difficult to see how what they're planning will involve a water bill of £600 and a bin waste disposal of £500. A few days of activity, that seems quite a lot.
Is there time for us to check with them? Come back to the next meeting?
Happy to leave it to the staff, to the officers, Chairman.
And if you could possibly clarify.
Just like it's not specific to this application. Not specific to this application itself, but just a general question. If a charity has a lot of assets, I mean, in this case, £70,000 worth of assets, do we still do we take that into regard when we discuss giving out grants, or do we say, well, you know, you've got enough, kind of thing?
I think really that is down to the trustees. It's certainly something that I recall has been considered and discussed in the past. Perhaps not specifically relevant to this application, but what we have found on some occasions is you've got a large national charity with very significant assets, but then the budget allocation to the specific Bedford activities may be different. We would normally, like I've noticed that it hasn't provided details there of what the organisation's reserve policy is, and I do apologise because that's something that's normally looked at as part of the financial comments. Normally you would expect to see that the organisation was holding a minimum of 3 months, perhaps 6 months in reserve, and sometimes the reserves are earmarked. I think, unfortunately, the information provided is a little bit less than we would normally expect to provide. And I do agree, in some of these projects, the organisations try to apply for funding for specific projects that would meet the criteria from the different grant-making organisations. I mean, perhaps if I could make a suggestion, if the committee was willing to approve the specific cost there, the minibus transport and the allowance for transporting children, and we could then establish whether the water bill and the bins and waste disposal are specific to this project or more general costs. If they are more general costs, then decline the application for that particular aspect of it.
Actually, I think you might be being unfair to yourself, because isn't it the case that they're requesting 2,000 and we're recommending 1,300, which is basically largely excluding the water bill and the bins and waste?
I think the recommendations are 2,000. The 1,300 was a previous award.
Ah, sorry.
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to approve it, leaving it to officers to sort this out.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to support that. I would like us, just as a general rule, to look at why people have large sums of money and they're applying to the House of Industry for sums of money. And if there isn't a reserves policy which not just they think is suitable, but which we think is suitable, then we shouldn't be giving them any money. And if it's a large national charity which doesn't give to its local branch, and we sub the local branch because they won't do that, then again, I'm rather uncomfortable about that, because they should be supporting their local branches and we shouldn't be giving them an easy way out. So just as a rule of thumb, charities with large balances should perhaps take a lower priority than charities that don't have a lot of money and come to us in need.
Thank you, thank you. I think a year or so ago we did give something to the Red Cross for this, which is in a similar situation. But you're right, I'm sure we all agree that with the principle.
It's a general principle,
yes,
Chair.
As a principle. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the fourth and last request for funding, which is the Citizens Advice Bureau. Do they call themselves Citizens Advice now? Yeah. So the request is for £150,000 plus 960, and consideration to be given to overhead costs. Now, every time this comes up, we have a discussion about how we don't want to pay overheads. Are there any questions or comments? I think we even have fed back to them that we don't want to pay overheads in the past.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on the report as a whole, but just on that issue, yes, it's in the text that is being debated.
Yes, and indeed the recommended amount reflects that. Are there any proposals? You're moving the recommendation of 132,000. Thank you. Is that seconded? Okay, all agreed with the exception of Councillor Moon, who declared an interest. Thank you. Now, the second part of, there was an item to note, wasn't there, about £5,000 to Faces.
Yes, Chair, it was a recommendation to which was just to note that a further £5,000 has been given to Faces for the work that they do, giving directly to residents in need, hardship and distress. The amount requested has been substantially less than we experienced a couple of years ago. And if you recall, there was a specified figure at which point it would need to come back to the committee, but we're well below that level at the moment.
Thanks. Are we happy to note that? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to item 5 is the property update, which I believe was uncontentious. Are there questions or comments? Okay, so I think we just have to note that. Okay, thank you. Item 6 is the Local Government Act 1972 Let me read that out since we're streaming. So we should consider whether to pass a resolution under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 to exclude the public from the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that consideration of the following item of business is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, we're off air. So, confidential meeting, minutes of the meeting of the charity held on